These are the two mid-range phones that Honor has just launched at its 2022 event, and this is the Honor X8 and this one is the Honor X9. They look pretty nice and they look pretty premium as well as mid-range phones, and they are the direct competitors to Xiaomi's Redmi Note 11 series. But to be honest, they are actually pretty weird mid-range phones, and let me tell you all about it. Now, back in the days when Honor was still under Huawei, you would have known that they make pretty respectable mid-range phones that give their competitors a really good run for their money. But this time, the Honor X8 and X9 is a little underwhelming when it comes to what they offer under the hood, though I'm sure they are still very attractively priced lifestyle mid-range phones. Now, starting with the Honor X8 right over here, it comes with a Snapdragon 680 processor, which is a pretty nice chipset without 5G. It has 6GB of RAM and 128GB of storage, whereby the Honor X9 has the Snapdragon 695 5G chipset with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. Well, they might sound pretty okay for current mid-range phone standards, but there's one thing that you might be disappointed, and that is they do not have expandable storage. They are very much the first mid-range phones to not come with expandable storage, and I really view that as a deal breaker. I mean, of course, these are not gaming phones by all means, but then you're going to install some games inside such as Genshin, PUBG, and these games actually take up a lot of storage space. So you are definitely not going to have enough storage space in the long term if you happen to take a lot of videos and you store those games inside either of these phones. So I view that as a deal breaker. The second disappointment over these two phones, but rather just one phone, and that's the Honor X9, is that it doesn't have a headphone jack. I mean, yeah, you could argue that there's there's the wireless earbuds thing, but then you know what, a headphone jack is pretty much a mid-range phone thing these days, and it doesn't have one. And the third disappointment that I have on these phones is that they do not have stereo speakers. I mean, come on, I really think that they deserve to have stereo speakers, but sadly, they only come with a single mono speaker that's right underneath it, and to be honest, they do not sound great at all. Now, of course, if you can look past all those disadvantages, both the Honor X8 and X9 are pretty solid and beautiful looking phones. Now, Honor says that they have enhanced the construction of these phones by including an aluminum alloy construction right inside here that is more resistant to bends if you happen to bend your phone previously. So these are pretty solid phones, and I like the fact that they use a frosted back right over here. I'm not sure whether they are glass or plastic, but they definitely feel like glass to me right over here, and they don't attract fingerprints at all. Now, moving on to the displays here, so there aren't too much of difference right over here. The Honor X8 has a 6.7-inch Full HD Plus display that refreshes at 90Hz. Honor X9 has a 6.81-inch display. It's an IPS as well that refreshes at 120Hz display. So if you're a fan of high refresh rate displays, yep, they do deliver, and they actually feel very, very smooth to the touch. Now, when it comes to the displays, although I'm a little underwhelmed that they are not using AMOLED panels like the Redmi Note 11 series, they actually look pretty good with slim bezels around here, although the bottom chin here still looks a little thick to my liking. But overall, if you look at the entire frame here, they are actually pretty slim bezel displays that gives it a really good screen to body ratio. But if you're thinking of one-handed usability, neither of these phones are going to offer that kind of convenience because they are actually pretty tall. As you can see, I'm holding on my hand right now. They feel very tall, and it's hard to make your thumb to go to the top, not unless you adjust the angle of your hand of holding the phone here. Now, when it comes to the cameras, this is where things get weird again. Starting with the Honor X8 right over here, as the more entry-level device here, you are getting a pretty decent 64-megapixel main lens and a 5-megapixel ultra-wide supported by a 2-megapixel bokeh and 2-megapixel macro lens. Now, that's actually pretty kind of standard for a mid-range phone these days, but most of the time, you're probably just going to use the 64-megapixel main lens and the 5-megapixel ultra-wide sensor to take your photos. When it comes to the Honor X9, well, it comes with a triple camera array that comes with a 48-megapixel main lens, alongside with a 2 megapixel bokeh and 2 megapixel macro camera. There's no ultra wide lens over here, which I don't know why Honor has purposely omitted that on a higher end device right over here, because that should be the case. I mean, you should just include the secondary lens as a ultra wide camera rather than a bokeh or a macro, because those are things that people wouldn't use on phones, right? But as for their front cameras, thankfully they both have the same 16 megapixel resolution, which will take pretty good pictures. And here are the camera samples. So in terms of both cameras, I would have to say that they take pretty okay-ish mid-range camera quality photos, but then to be honest, it's not the best that I've seen in the market right now. And it becomes worse when it comes to low light. As you can see, things are overexposed, there's a lot of grain and noise all around. So yeah, I have to say that their cameras are not the best when it comes to mid-range phone standards, which is a little underwhelming because, like I said, Honor used to be the company and brand that makes really respectable mid-range phones, but they are not really doing it great this time on the X8 and the X9. Now, when it comes to their batteries and battery life, these two phones are fortunately decent in that department. The X8 comes with a 4000 mAh battery with support up to 22.5 watts of Honor Supercharge. The X9 comes with a 4800 mAh battery with support up to 66 watts of Honor Supercharge. By all means, these are very fast charging speeds for mid-range phones, but the X8 certainly falls behind some other competitors out there. The bottom line here is that the Honor X8 and X9 are decent performing mid-range phones. They do not have any major software issues during my review period, and they perform really well in my social media browsing and texting work. The only thing that makes it really hard to recommend are the disadvantages that I mentioned earlier and the weird decisions that Honor has made on their hardware, such as the lack of storage expansion, which is a deal breaker for most people, I guess, and the lack of a headphone jack on the Honor X9, which is supposedly the better device than the Honor X8 here. But what do you think about these two devices? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and that's pretty much for my quick impressions and probably a quick review of these two phones. That's it for now, and thanks for watching today's video. Stay tuned for more videos coming right up on the channel. Be sure to stay subscribed, and I will see you guys in the next video.